Well, Mark, Darlene, thanks for joining me. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. I've grown up shopping at Wayman's. My mom and dad have brought me to Wayman's my whole life. I've always known Wayman's to be in Martinsville. So tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, there's the business is literally our family right now. It's me and my wife, mom and dad, and of course Scott, and that's all of us.
We have Jeff now for service and delivery.
Yeah.
Okay.
But family-wise, my wife and I haven't had kids, so we have grandcats. Our mom has grandcats.
Yes.
Not grandkids.
Are you allergic to
grandcats.
cats?
Yes.
So there's only two children. It was Scott and you growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So
No grandchildren.
I'm sorry?
No grandchildren.
No grandchildren. So Mark, tell me a little bit about your mom and dad. Gail is your dad.
Gail's my dad, and he's always talked about as when his name is spelled like female Gail. So when people call and ask for her, we know that they don't really know him.
Oh.
So, but they are, I would say, a classical definition of workaholics. They just work and work and work, and that's been what they've done. And because they worked and worked and worked, that's how I was able to go through college. We did not really qualify for financial aid except for once. We went through all that financial aid stuff one year, turned it all in. They gave me $12. Not all at once. $6 one semester and $6 another semester. But
wow.
but they worked really hard over the time, and that's who they
I
are.
worked a lot of overtime while you were in college.
And Dad used to work a lot of overtime also on some of the truck docks and stuff like that when I was younger, and they just made sure that, if we needed something or if Scott needed something, they'd go out and work a little extra overtime and made sure we have it. So it was workaholic is a real good definition, and they're both 80 or approaching 80, and here they are still working. So
right. Small business entrepreneurship, that's the backbone of America.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's not one of those 40-hour-a-week jobs.
Right.
It just keeps going.
So obviously, we all miss Scott. He was a huge part of Martinsville, a huge part of Wayman's.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about Scotty and what he did here at the store and just the impact that he made.
Well, originally, Mom and Dad bought the store, and then Scott was, working here with them and things like that. And over time, of course, then he became more and more involved with it. Right after high school, Scott actually went to college for a short time, didn't like it, went for band, to be a band director, and didn't like it, and ended up working at a store in Mooresville called Freeman's, if anybody remembers that name. Mm-hmm. Freeman's Appliances up in Mooresville, and then he went over and worked at Recommended TV. And then, so when Mom and Dad ended up buying the store from Perry Terrell, it was Terrell's Furniture and Appliances before Wayman's.
I didn't know that.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. And so when they bought the store, then Scott came in and started working at the store and things like that. So, but he was, over the years, the driving force of the store and things like that. And
The last 10 years he ran the store pretty much.
Okay.
except for in the back, Mom's always done the books.
Wow.
Even during that 10-year period, she's always been the bookkeeper and the person saying, Dad would always say, Scott, or Dad would come up with the idea, Scott would figure out how to do it, and Mom would figure out how to pay for it.
I've heard him say that.
Yes.
Yep, that's what it was. So, but he was the driving force of Wayman's Furniture for years and years, and not initially, because Dad was an appliance salesman and a wholesale salesman in appliances for years and years, and got to know Perry, and Perry was ready to get out of the business and things like that, and so they ended up buying this. And
what year was that?
84, and then January of 85 was the first New Year's Day sale.
That was our opening day. It was January 1st, 1985.
Wow.
4-hour sale.
And they've done a 4-hour special sale on January 1st ever since.
Yeah, it's well known. You know that's going to happen
Yes.
every year.
Yeah.
We have people call, they would ask, and they would come in the last few days and pick out some things they might like
Huh.
and wait for you to lower the price for January 1st. Yes.
That's awesome. So it began in 84, and I guess you've already kind of talked about it, but go ahead and tell us what it was like right when you first started started taking over the store? What was it like? You own a new business, you've got a family. Just tell us a little bit about some of your memories there.
We actually didn't change the name initially. We stayed Terrell's Furniture and Appliances. And then we changed it to Wayman's Furniture, formerly Terrell's. And then after 6 months, then we went straight to Wayman's. So we sort of gradually changed the business so that people that were used to it could get used to the new name.
Okay, that's neat.
Perry had a bout of cancer before
Okay.
he sold the store. And then he got a clean bill of health. And he's like, I can retire and enjoy myself. And then what was it, 6 or 8 months later?
Came back.
It all came back and got him. So I mean, timing-wise, at least he had some time out of the store to enjoy himself a little bit. But he knew that it was time to change. And with Mom and Dad and Scott coming in, it brought new life into the business and things like that. And Wayman's has thrived ever since.
Now, how old were you and Scott in '84 when they bought the business?
So I was 20, so Scott would have been 22 or 23.
Okay, so Scott was the oldest.
Right.
Okay. So was he a good big brother?
I thought he was, but then he would he would do stuff to me and tell me things that the one I remember, and she's got much more, but the one I remember was we were sitting there eating dinner one night, and I don't know why the food was getting cold, and he's like, here. And he would give me salt. He'd say, put that on there to warm it back up. And I'm putting salt on there. It's like, this isn't working at all. He would do stuff like that to me all the time. And I'm like, okay, big brother says do it. So.
There was a time when they were real little and they were sitting in the bathtub, one on each end, and I hear Scott saying, well, Mark says, well, how come they got me second? He said, they got me first, and then you had to wait in the hospital until they decided they wanted to have another one. So when he got a little older, we bought him a shirt. He asked us one day why we got him second, and we got him a shirt that said, I'm number 2, I try harder.
That's great. You and Scott were in your 20s when they bought the store, and
Right.
You've told me some stories before we started recording about some of the commercials that you guys used to do. Tell us about that.
Well, I wasn't really here that much because I was in college. And I actually came home at Christmas break, and Scott and Mom and Dad are sitting there like, we've got something to tell you. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, we've all quit our jobs. I'm like, am I going back to college or not? I didn't know.
Wow.
We've all quit our jobs and we're buying this furniture store in Martinsville. I'm like, am I done? What am I doing? But
Wow.
they did figure out how to keep me going to college, so I was able to do that. But then, of course, we had to have commercials and things like that. So Scott and I would go over and make commercials, and the very first one was we stole it from the Smothers Brothers. And it was always, Mom always did like you best, and things like that. And we would do those kind of funny commercials along the way. And gosh, I remember going, it was still reel-to-reel technology at the time. So you couldn't stop. You had to do all 30 seconds at once. And if you messed up, you had to go back and do all 30 seconds again. So
Wow.
we would sit there, and sometimes it would take us 3 hours to do one 30-second commercial because we'd get giggling and we'd laugh about something that we would make a mistake on and all these other things. But boy, we had a blast making those things. And I remember 2 of them that I remember. Well, there's 3 of them. The one with the turkeys. We were giving away turkeys, and we had sound effects and everything like that. And the premise was that I was in charge of going to get the turkeys. Well, you get frozen turkeys when you're giving away. Well, I got live turkeys. And, he said, where's all the turkeys? I said, there's this door sound, and we opened it up, and look, he's like, they're live. I'm like, yeah, aren't they great? Kind of a WKRP thing, we stole from that a little bit. And tell them about a customer coming in asking about that.
They said it was really terrible what Mark did to Scott getting those live turkeys. And I said, well, that poor lady thinks I've got one brilliant son and one idiot.
Some people really believe these commercials,
Well, he had one where we took on General Electric with GE. We had just gotten GE, so he says General Electric, and Mark's going, now do I have to salute this guy? He always
General.
played the one that knew nothing.
Yeah. So we had a good time doing all those over the years, and I think that kind of came from just being silly and together, and it ended up being, let's do some silly commercials together, and
Being themselves.
it kind of became a running joke all the time for those early
The
years.
first one, we had gone out of town for a few days, Gail and I. We came back, stopped at the grocery store, Somebody walked up and said, "The Boyce commercial is hilarious." We hadn't heard it. I wonder what they did.
What did the boys do now?
Yes, that's right.
That was their first one.
But we enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun doing those.
Yeah, absolutely. Good memories.
Yeah.
So what are some of your fondest memories of Martinsville back then?
Well, it was the first time I got to be here a lot because I was working in Indianapolis
Okay.
and running back and forth. So I loved it. I loved being in the store from the beginning. And Scott, of course, his love of Martinsville anyway. He said when he went away to school he hated it. He said, "I just want a job in Martinsville and where I can just stay there and work." So when we bought the store, I said, "Okay, here you are."
Yeah, there you
got
go.
Yeah, he didn't want to leave Martinsville. I mean, it was Morgan County and Martinsville was what he wanted to do and what he wanted to be. And, my wife and I got married, and we got married in Gatlinburg. And we got down there, and we're like, "Scott, you got to come to a wedding." He's like, "Okay, I'll come."
Couldn't get him out of town.
He didn't stay. He came down. Drove down for the wedding and drove right back because he's like, "I could get back. I could get back to town. I could get back to my horse." I mean, you just couldn't get him out of town
Why
for
was
anything.
Martinsville so special to Scott? Why was it in Morgan County? I mean, he was involved in just more than just
He
Martinsville.
always was like that. The minute he moved to when we moved to Martinsville, he was going into 7th grade.
Okay.
He never wanted to leave. He loved it from day one.
Well,
That was his place.
And it was, we were music people. We were in the band and stuff like that. Fantastic band director, of course, with Jerry Vogel. And Fall Foliage Festival was here, and we were marching in the parades and stuff like that. And it just became more and more important. Martinsville just became a bigger part of his life that, we just couldn't pry him out for anything.
He loved to check the history of the buildings downtown, just everything. He just liked it here.
Yeah.
So he was probably really proud of the development that's happening downtown.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, and of course, how many times did they try to get that light to come on? The
water.
the water light, and how many times did they try that over the years and stuff like that? And he's like, "They're going to get it right." And I mean, he was just so excited every time they put it up there, and it's like, "Okay, it's great.
Yeah.
This is what Martinsville's about," and things like that. And and just and that courthouse is just gorgeous down there too, especially at Christmas time with that light down there. I mean, it's there's a lot of neat things here. And
fall foliage, my goodness.
he loved the fall foliage parade, and so I mean, it's just lots of things. Well, he would also go, "I don't know why they make me go over to the radio station makes me go over and do those fireworks." He goes, "Well, there's a blue one, and well, that's a pretty green one." He said they used to actually have him narrate when the fireworks would go off. And I mean,
That's hilarious.
But
How
he
do you
loved
narrate
that.
fireworks?
No, but he did. I mean,
And he made it sound great.
Yeah. Oh, and they would do the ground displays and stuff like that. But he was always talking, "Well, there's a blue one."
Ooh, there's a red one, yay.
I can hear him saying that. So coming back to the furniture business, compare the way furniture is now, the way it's made now. Everyone always says, "Oh, they don't make appliances or furniture the way they used to." Is there any truth to that?
Again, I've not been around it that much, but there is just quality does change over the years and stuff like that. And I think people are more disposable now too. So I think the furniture and appliances have followed that because people do move around a lot. My wife and I have moved a lot in over the years and things like that. So we've not kept our furniture and appliances. They're not heirlooms and hand-me-downs as much as they used to be anymore. You can still get those things as that quality, but most people don't. They don't want to spend the money to get that quality anymore. Except for appliances, sometimes they want the top end appliances if they can get them.
Warranty means a lot to them on the appliances now.
Yeah, because sometimes appliances don't last as long as they did. So getting that 3 or 5 or 7 year warranty is important to people. So wood is still wood. I mean, you still get good quality on furniture and things like that if you use good quality materials and things like that. So
And you have the difference in the appliances is you almost have to have a chart to see who bought who, what brands they make now, and this brand is now bought up 4 or 5 more, and
Right.
and yeah, that gets a little confusing to people.
right.
The running joke in my family, my wife's parents bought a refrigerator before she was born, and that was she's going to kill me for saying how old she is, but it was 1980, and they still have the exact same refrigerator.
Right.
She and I have been married 17 years, and we're on our second refrigerator.
Right. Yeah.
And so I just, that's the running joke, and her mom wants a new refrigerator so bad, but her dad won't replace it till that one dies.
It still works.
It won't die.
Well, let's hope she doesn't sabotage it, so she gets a new one.
Exactly. She's threatened it. Trust me. So with I-69 coming through, it's swallowed up a lot of businesses. It's really affected it's affected the landscape. It's affected businesses.
Right.
And some businesses have had to close. And I know that you and Miles Furniture have had a great relationship over the years. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, actually, Scott and Mike Miles just had a great relationship. They would kind of trade off if they needed bed frames, somebody got a little short on inventory or whatever. And we've had a couple of their lines have come down and talked to us about moving some of those down here now that Miles is closing.
Because they're liquidating and having to close because of the interstate.
The interstate got them.
It's been a close relationship, I think, over the years because Miles actually lived like 5 houses down from us in Sherman Estates.
Really?
So that there's always been a connection there, and they also used to be just down the street from us here too before they built their big building up on the north side of the county. But it's people say, oh, maybe you don't want competition. Well, it's good to have competition because then more people can look at their store, they can look at our store and make the decision what they want. And there's more than enough people in our area for their niche and for our niche, and it's been a good relationship over the years, and we wish them luck. We're happy they're able to close on their terms and things like that, and they're just like I said, the whole landscape of this swath through Morgan County is changing, and they kind of got
so
wrapped
many
up in it.
businesses that don't know what's going to happen to them when this highway thing gets closed down here south of Martinsville and north of Martinsville. That's going to make a huge difference. We're going to get a lot of traffic in front of our store.
Absolutely.
It's going to be.
And that was one of my questions is what are your thoughts with all the added traffic that's going to be coming by your store? It should be really good for business, I would think.
It will be, I think, because there's going to be more and more people seeing the store that might not have ever seen it before, especially people coming up from Bloomington and things like that. They're going to have to go by the store that might not have ever. They went straight through on 37. And we do sell quite a few things in Bloomington, and a very prominent longtime business down there that sold appliances recently closed also. So
after 50 years, I think.
Yeah, so we're picking up some of that business too. So they're going to see us. Our biggest concern is after we get them in here, how are we going to get them out? Because the traffic is going to be so much right in front of our store. I mean, I've been halfway thinking we're going to get a Walmart greeter kind of guy, but it's going to be a crossing guard. He's going to grab a little stop sign and stop the traffic just so our people can get out there.
You're not going to tell them my suggestion.
No, we're not going to tell you your suggestion.
How have consumers shopping changed over the years? Obviously, like for instance, in 1984 when you bought the store, did people travel to Indianapolis and Bloomington to shop for furniture, or was it just we're going to buy whatever's local? And how have you seen that change over the years?
We have some customers that are very loyal that come in and tell us that everything in their house is there. And then the online maybe is making a difference, and they're a little more knowledgeable comparing, especially with appliances. They know a little more about those things than they did. I don't know that we have seen much. We don't hear a lot of talk about we're going to go check Indianapolis.
So just the consumer is more educated on when they come in what they want, and then you're able to just help them find what they need quicker, probably.
Some people walk in and say, "Here's the model number I want. Order it for me."
Oh yeah.
I mean, because they've already done their research and things like that, and so it's a little bit different there.
Computers are making a difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is, and so it's not. It's going to keep continually changing though, as far as what consumers are going to want and things like that. But over the years, we have had fantastic customers who do keep coming back and coming back. they were walking in going, I was here 35 years ago when you came to the very first day you opened. I came and bought something, and they're still here. And so that's great. But we're also looking for new customers too. I mean, because not everybody can buy everything 30 years.
But you got to realize I'm not up there with the customers a lot. They make me stay in the office.
Tell the story about what Scott used to say when you would come up there.
I would go up there with a paper if I had a problem, and he'd just say, "Mom, go to your room." I told him he'd been waiting a long time to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can so hear him saying that too.
Yeah. That or the time I came in. Did I tell the story about him on the computer?
No, go ahead.
I touched it. I came in one morning, big Andy Griffith fans they are. I touched my computer, and the minute my hands touched the keys, the voice of Floyd the barber came out and said, "Ooh, I like that." Knew Scott had been in my office.
And where was he when that happened?
He's up there peeking and watching in my window back
to
there.
see your reaction.
Me touching the keys, yes, that's Scott.
Oh, that's great. So when did Scott's radio career start? A lot of people knew him from the morning show on WCBK. When did that start?
That was 22 years, but actually he was there 30 years. He started on a Sunday night show called Sunday Funnies with him and Randy McPike, and they played all funny music.
I didn't know that.
And then he started filling in the mornings, and then they asked him if he would take that morning shift. 5 to 9, he got used to going to bed at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, that was his bedtime.
He said he would not know life not going to bed at 8 o'clock. He had to do it, or he couldn't keep it up.
He would, he started with that, with just filling in. How they have part-timers and stuff like that, and that's what he was the whole time. He was part-timer, and he would go in, and then he'd start playing Ray Stevens songs and different songs like that, and then it ended up moving in with Randy, moving into an entire half-hour show every Sunday night. They do a new Sunday Funnies, and they would do just 8 or 10 of the. It was kind of, I can't remember that old Dr. Demento. Remember Dr. Demento? Mm-hmm. Dr. Demento would do these funny shows and stuff like that, and he was a national guy.
Okay. But
they kind of started doing these funny little songs and things like that and compiling those, but they was all local, and they would do the funny little things back and forth and stuff. And then he started filling in more and more, and then Mr. Keister said, Scott, if you just, we need a morning guy, if you just fill in until we find somebody new. Well, 22 years later, he was still filling in.
I guess I never found him.
No, I guess not. So that meant all the snowstorms we had, all the severe weather, he would be the one that would come in the mornings and talk about all the school closings. Right. Was there ever a time he couldn't make it in?
Well, yeah, of course there were times that he couldn't make it in, and I think this was one of the times when Phil Deckard was mayor. Feels like there's information that has to be out there, and Scott was the guy. And so Scott's called in and said, I can't get out of Shireman, and we're snowed in. I can't get in there. Phil said he sent the street department up and to get Scott, to get him to the radio station, because Scott had to give out information, and Phil needed that information out, so they just went up and got him,
That's incredible.
And tell them about the people listening with storms and things like that. And
one lady came in one day. He would take off and go to the station immediately if there was a bad storm. And she said, I was really worried about that storm last night, but I turned on the radio and Scotty wasn't on, so I figured it must not be too bad.
Oh, that's great.
Because it didn't matter. I mean, he and Keith Rhodes they were both listening to the scanners all the time, and if something happened, and they thought it was important enough, Scott would be on the radio, Keith would be out on the scene, and they'd be calling back and forth, getting the information and getting it out to everybody in the county. It didn't matter if it was, tornadoes or if it was
a bad fire. We had a bad fire on the square one time.
Right. Flood, the big flood that came through and stuff. I mean, Scott was there for all of those things and was the eyes and ears. Well, Keith was the eyes and ears, but Scott was the voice of what to do and the calming voice for the county and for the city as far as everything's going to be okay, or here's what happened, stay away from there, let the first responders do their job. But it was funny that they said, well, no, we got to go get him because we got to have his voice on the air to let everybody know what's happening.
And that's true. People were waiting to hear what was going on, and someone needed to get the station on the air.
Right.
So, Mark, where did you graduate from college?
Indiana University.
Indiana University.
Yep.
And what was your major?
I have an instrumental music degree from IU.
Great. And so you, band director, what else did you do?
I was band director and assistant principal for a 31-year period of time. So over the years, I kind of went crazy and did 4 years of assistant principal and then 3 years as high school principal. And so it was a really shock going from band kids, they're always good kids, to being in charge of discipline for the entire school. And now I'm dealing with drugs and alcohol and just bad kids in general, and it was a shock, you know. So I thought, well, I'll move up to principal and deal with, you know, teachers and stuff like that. But, you know, it was
I liked working with the kids.
I missed the music, and I missed making music with kids, and I missed that part. So probably about 10 years ago, I went back to the classroom teaching music with kids rather than being the administrator. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I might.
And most recently, where did you live?
We were in Florida for the last 4 years. My wife and I are both band directors.
Okay, great.
Alyssa is a band director also, and so we were living in Florida teaching band. I was the middle school band director, and she was the high school band director.
Oh, okay.
And we would work together that way, and we would work together with marching bands and stuff like that. But you know, my kids would move from my school up into her school, so yeah, it was really neat.
He said he was going to slow down a little. I'm going to take the junior high and let her take the high school. But all I got was picture after picture and all the extra things he was doing.
So while you were in Florida, did you keep up with what was happening in Martinsville and keep up with Mom and Dad and Scott? And...
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't a daily thing, but we would probably talk once a week easily with that, and Scott and I would talk.
Texting and pictures these days too.
Yeah, and internet made a big difference and stuff like that. So I mean, I knew. I would follow, even though I wasn't in Florida, I was in different places in Indiana. I mean, you go through all the times, even when, all the sports and stuff like that, the good run of just spectacular girls championships here for a while and things like that.
Basketball and golf.
And volleyball, they had volleyball too.
Yeah,
It's like, what'd they say for a long time, or boys will be boys and girls will be champions,
Yes.
here in town. I mean, because that's what it was for a long time. And so I was, I followed it a long time. And of course with band, when I was a band director, I'd follow the band here, and I'd follow, of course, Jerry Vogel, fantastic guy, and Steve Main, our orchestra director, was just, another guy that was just fantastic, and so we would follow that and keep track of everything that was going on with that, and of course then every now and then Scott would be calling me when I'm in Florida and saying, so Mark, there's a hurricane coming your way, and we would talk on the air in the mornings about the hurricanes coming through Florida. Yeah, and we would talk about the weather down there and what was happening, and so I was kind of no one really cared, I guess, being that far away. The hurrane wouldn't bother anybody here, but it was interesting what people could hear it.
That way.
Yeah, so I would talk about that a little bit. And he'd call up we were an hour different when we were in the Panhandle, and that hurricane came through, and he would call, but it would be 5:30 my time, but he'd already been on the air for an hour and a half, and I'm like, what do you want me to talk about? What? So I'd have to wake up a little bit and talk after a newscast or something like that.
I didn't know WCBK had a weather forecaster in Florida.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, how about that?
Your paycheck's still
Unpaid.
in the mail, right?
Yeah, that's right. They couldn't find my address, I guess, for the send the checks.
So did you ever think you'd be back in Martinsville running the store? You're managing the store right now, right?
Yeah. My wife and I are running the store as far as the managing part.
And Alyssa is the brains behind it, the couple, right?
Of course,
yeah.
Of course. I mean, that's she was when I was band director too. She was when I was band director too. No, I don't think we imagined it. I think we talked about coming back eventually, and things like that. I mean, Alyssa's family's from Vincennes.
Okay.
And so they were wanting us to come back, and Mom and Dad and Scott were wanting us to come back and things like that. And I didn't know, I think we kind of had it in the back of our minds, but obviously not in this kind of situation,
Sure.
That was a shock that morning to call him from the hospital.
Sure.
Yeah.
He said 13 hours, I can be there, Mom. I'm on my way.
Well, Scott had an episode probably 2 years before that with sugar. He had a high blood sugar issue, and he was on the air. And I think he collapsed on the air, and they had to come and get him and take him over. And Mom and Dad are calling, and I'm like, "Do I need to come up? What's going on? Am I going?" And they said, "No, we're okay." And then this time they said, "No, you need to come." So I said, I'll 13 hours, I'll be there. And we were.
And we're gonna get to that here in just a moment.
Yeah.
So tell me real quick about Scott buying the Little Nashville Opry. We've talked about he was a big Morgan County fan, a big Martinsville fan, but he loved music.
Oh, he loved that music, loved the country music, talked to a lot of them.
Yeah.
Went over and introduced some of them on the shows and did little interviews.
Oh, how many years did you and Dad have season tickets over there? I mean, it was years and years and years that the family had season tickets, and Alyssa and I would even come up every now and then, because we were teaching Sullivan and wherever we were teaching, we would come up and watch some people and stuff like that. But years and years, you were taking Granny and Dick out there,
taking my mom and Dick over, and that got to be our weekend. We worked so many hours. And
workaholic.
We took the 9:30 shows when they had them because we never knew when we'd get out of here on time. So we said, well, we know we'll do that. We can make that, and we did that. And that got to be our big weekend, and eat over there and go to a show.
But Scott did not forget anything. I mean, his memory was just amazing. Memory. But he knew all the old guys, and he knew all of the old ladies who were singing, and he knew their songs. He knew when they came out, and he knew the history of all these people. And that came from his love of music, but then all those years of being on country radio in the morning and running country radio as a DJ. I mean, he just knew all these things and just fell in love with that. And when it burnt down, Mom and Dad and Scott were actually in the process of trying to buy it at that time when it burnt.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they had been in talks at that point, and then it just became difficult to. I mean, if you're buying something that's there, it's easier than to buy something when there's nothing there, and to get the loans and things like that to make it work. And so it just never panned out. I mean, we got close a couple times and things like that with that. But I mean, I know you did it. You sit and talk with him, and you see that glimmer and that love of, and that was something that was going to happen in his mind. That this is going to be there. Little Nashville will rise again.
Or a new song would come out, and he would say, "Listen to the background. Hear that guy playing the guitar? I know that's so and so that played on such and such." And he would go back, and yes, he was. He would recognize the way they played.
Yeah.
Wow.
He loved that.
Well, he had a good relationship with Loretta Lynn's manager, and a good relationship with the Oak Ridge Boys. And even at the funeral, we had flowers from the Oak Ridge Boys were sent to the funeral and things like that. So I mean, he had really good relationships with these people, and just that was just something he was so excited about. And when the opportunity came to buy the land. We didn't buy the land, I wasn't here. They didn't buy the land. They bought the land, they bought the naming rights, they bought the logos, they bought everything that was Little Nashville Opry. We still own. We still own the rights to all the names and everything like that. So
I'll never forget standing out in the showroom with all the big glass windows, and he talked to me for probably an hour and a half. He had opening night already planned out. He knew who was going to sing.
Yes.
I mean, it was just fun to hear him talk about it, and I just wish that it would have come true.
Leroy Van Dyke, he would talk to them on the phone, and he's in his 80s, and still traveling.
Yeah.
And he called in? His wife called in on his birthday and said, "I got Leroy on the phone," and talked to him on the phone on the air.
Oh, that's neat.
He just loved. He was the same way about people in Martinsville. He loved to hear the older customers tell their stories of when they were younger and what they did. He would come back and say, "Oh, Mom, do you know he used to do this, this, and this?" Mm-hmm. He just had a thing about people, and he had such a memory.
So I didn't know that you all own the rights, the naming rights, and all that. Is there any plans to move forward with that at all right now, or
we haven't been able to think about that much yet?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still like to think that somewhere in the future it will be there. We just don't know where. I mean, with as much time and energy and dreaming that he had, I think he'd come back and haunt me if I said, "No, we're never going to do it."
Right. I mean, you almost feel like you have to do it for him.
Right. Yes. When and where and all that stuff is completely in the future, but
Yeah.
we're not going to give up the naming rights and all that stuff to Little Nashville Opry. The history that goes along with that, and the history of the Waymans being part of being there, and then trying to purchase it, and then finally being able to purchase the names and the land and stuff. It's it's
The lady that owned it, she really liked Scott. She took it, she really thought he was the person should have it, and she wanted to make sure he had the naming rights, and even a little extra property that she owned in the back that she wanted him to have.
Yeah, I think it's right where it belongs with you guys. So.
well, good. Yeah, we do too.
So, in my notes, I have it listed as the day that changed Martinsville forever. So tell us about that day from your recollection, Mark. And obviously we're talking about the day that Scotty passed away.
I was already at school down in Florida. I'd already gone into my office and had not started my day yet. And I got a call from Dad saying that Scott had collapsed and that they were taking him to the hospital. And my first thought was that he hadn't been paying attention to his sugar levels, and that's what we were running into because we had that incident a couple years prior. And I said, okay, so do I need to come? I mean, because being so far away, that's the first thing I think of is, do I need to be there? And this time he said yes. And well, first thing I did was I called my wife and said, here's what's going on. Don't know what's going on. All I knew that they were still doing CPR, that they'd already made it to the hospital before they called me. And then so I called Alyssa and told her everything, what was going on, and said, we got to go. And then I called my principal. Actually, I ran to the principal's office because I couldn't get a hold of him on the phone. So I ran and let him know what was going on, and literally ran back and I'm not a runner. Some of my students are like, what's going on? What's going on? And I'm just running past them because they know something's wrong, because I'm not going to run. And unless there's a big dog chasing me, I'm not going to run. So I'm running back to the thing, and they knew something was wrong too, but they were still before classes had started. So I went and grabbed everything, locked up, and took off. And some of those kids I never saw again because it was right at the end of a school year. So it was, because we took off and came up here, and before I got home to start packing, Dad called back and said Scott had died. And then so the urgency slowed just a little bit. We were able to, think through packing and all those kinds of things. And then we took off and came up here, and I can't even remember where we went when we got here right now. I'm assuming we went to the house, to Mom and Dad's house, but I can't ever remember what happened at that point. But we had to, start making decisions and making arrangements and doing what we had to do.
Did he know that he was sick? And I'm not sure if you're not even comfortable talking about how he passed away, that's fine, but...
I'm not sure he knew.
Okay.
I think he knew something. I had been trying to get him to go to the doctor because he's talking about being tired, and Scott never said he was tired.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, you worry too much. My knees are bothering me, and that wears you out. And I had just made an appointment for him for the next week because I went up and said, I don't care if it's your knees or what it is, you need to go get checked out.
Mm-hmm.
But he just didn't show up to work that morning, and he was unconscious when they got into the house. But I will say the IU emergency was wonderful. They kept us very informed, and it was quite a while. They kept coming out and telling us what was going on, and finally had to come out and say, we just can't do anymore.
Right. And was it a heart attack?
It was heart. They said the heart was enlarged,
Okay.
which they say you can't really always tell from examination. It beats the same, they say. At least that's the word we were told, but that's what they said it was. So that was, we were there quite a while.
Yeah, it's almost ironic because Scott's heart was huge for everybody, you know, and his heart truly was 3 times larger than it should have been. You know, I mean, it was
And
enlarged.
people say we know he had a big heart.
And he truly did. You know,
Wow.
he truly did.
Yeah.
So,
The
We
connection
have so
there.
many people
Yeah.
say that to me. They'll say, well, we knew he had a big heart.
Wow. Talking about a big heart, tell us a story about the children that he took care of, or
without naming names and things like that, I mean, Scott would do anything for anybody, you know, and there was someone that he knew that had some kids, and the dad of those kids was not doing the things he needed to do to be a good dad, and was in trouble with the law and different things like that. And so Scott kind of had a little relationship with these boys, and the dad wasn't being responsible necessarily all the time, and Scott would take them food. I mean, they'd call and say, we need this, and we need money. And Scott's like, I'm not going to bring him money. So he took food. He'd just go buy sandwiches and food
Wow.
for these little boys. And then Scott went through the process of helping grandfather adopt the kids, and Scott would go up and visit them all the time, and Uncle Scott and Uncle Scotty and things like that. And he just loved those little boys, and you know, he didn't talk about that on the air. He didn't
Right.
talk about that to anybody. I mean, it's just,
But so many people knew about him and those boys that one lady that worked at the station at the funeral were these 2 angel nightlights about a foot tall, and she sent them to the funeral and said, these are for Scott's boys
yeah.
to take home. Yes.
And what was it the one boy would say about when he, you know,
Uncle Scotty brought me food when I was hungry.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that story because that's the quiet side of Scott, and that is a measure of the man that he really was, which is what we all knew anyway.
Well, and that's again going back to this, how big a heart he had.
Yeah.
You know, these weren't even his kids. They weren't related to us. They had no connection to us. He just ended up having this fantastic connection with
It's
these
been
young
a
boys.
big void in their life. It was heartbroken. for the
I'm sure.
boys.
So obviously, as a mom and a dad, you're not supposed to lose a child,
No.
right? And so, how? Obviously, a generic question like how did that affect you and Gail is a generic question, but Gail got sick soon after that.
Yes.
Can you talk about?
21 days he was in the hospital after Scott.
Well, it actually was before. It was actually before that. Dad had going all the way back to January of 2019. He had open heart surgery,
Had bypass.
and he had blood thinners and things like that. Well, 2 weeks before Scott died, Dad had fallen at the house, trying to pull down the garage door because the power went out, and he slipped and fell. And unbeknownst to anybody, he had internal bleeding. And so, you know, during funeral week, we came up, and of course, during funeral week, he didn't look good, and we thought, well, it's got to be just grief and just not feeling good and things like that. So Alyssa and I went back to Florida to get the house ready to be put up for sale and things like that, and we came back, and he couldn't move. He couldn't even
couldn't
stand
hardly
up and
walk.
walk or do anything. So we took him to a Methodist, and they're like, you know, his kidneys have shut down, and his blood's at like 50%. I mean, he almost died. And so he was in there 21, 22 days at that point. And then, you know, it was very, very close. But there was no grieving going on for really almost any of us because we were dealing with Dad.
We closed the store the month of June because he was so bad we didn't know what was going to happen.
And Scott would not have been happy to we're closed that long,
No.
you know. So I mean, but we didn't have a choice because Alyssa and I didn't know the business. Dad wasn't here, Mom wasn't here. She was up there. We didn't know what to do, so it was closed. So when we knew he was going to be better, then we decided we're going to open the store again. Well, then he's back in the store and he's helping and things like that and helping. He would sit and go, move that over there, do that. I mean, that's what he was helping us do. But then he got listeria in the middle of the summertime, and I
That was
didn't really,
September.
I didn't really know what listeria was, but you know, elderly people, it kills 20% of the people who get listeria, and it's a food poisoning basically is what listeria is, and
Okay.
it almost killed that. So he spent another 5 weeks in the hospital about there too, 4
He
weeks.
ended up with about 80 days last year overall.
Yeah.
So you just got from one tragedy to another.
Well, and then even with that, we had one of our part-time workers died in that trailer fire.
That's right.
And Davey was a fantastic man. There's a whole other conversation about Davey.
Oh, I forgot about
But
that.
Davey was a part-time worker here because he worked at Foxcliff all during the year when it was good weather, and then in the wintertime, the winter before, he would come here and would work and things like that. And then you couldn't hardly
Just a great guy.
you couldn't hardly pay him.
I called him a
because he
kid. He
didn't
was
want it.
40, but he was a kid to me.
Yeah, in my phone when I came back, as I knew of him, but I didn't know him real well. But when I came back, I knew him. He helped me and Alyssa move and things like that. One of the things that I put in my phone was Davey, all-around good guy, because that's who he was. He was just an all-around good guy. When we went to his funeral, people were saying, he was the kind of guy that you couldn't pay to do work, and they would give him money. He'd do whatever for him. They'd give him money, and they'd get home and they're like, it was in their pocket. He usually would put it back in their pocket because he didn't want to do. So 2019 was a very bad year for the Wayman family. I mean,
Absolutely.
it was just not a good year with health and with deaths and things. And we were just very, very thankful 2019 is gone.
Well, and I know Scott would want you guys to look to the future and to continue the store, and that's what you're doing. So
He didn't want us to close. He wouldn't want us to close the store.
right.
And we thought we were afraid we were going to have to, as bad as Gail was. We just didn't know what was going to happen
Right.
then. So we needed to be back in here, and he needed to be back here, Gail.
Absolutely. So how is business now? People are happy you're open again.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and some people think we're closing because of Miles. Because they're saying that the furniture store in Martinsville is closing. Well, there's two of us now, but no, we're not closing. We're here, and we have people coming in all the time going, "Oh, we hear you're closing," or "We heard the old man died and you're closing." It's like, well, no, Dad didn't die.
He's right there.
Yeah, he's right there. He's sitting right over there. And when that happened, I called up there because he was actually in the hospital one day when somebody did that. I called up there and said, I think we're going to have a sale, because it's like Dad's not dead yet sale or something like that. Because everybody thought
You think that would be a first?
we
Yeah,
thought
I
that'd
know.
get attention at least.
It definitely would get attention.
But no, business is going well. I mean, we've
Had a great January, probably the best one in 10 years.
We've had, it could
Wow.
be, yeah. We know that the month of January sales was the best since mid 2016.
Okay.
And January 1st sale, our big sale that we do on January 1st, best one in 5 years. I mean, people are coming here, and we've got the loyal people coming back, and we've got people hearing the radio ads that Alyssa and I are doing, and we've done some Facebook ads and things like that now, and getting people to come in, and it's the businesses are doing very well right now.
When did it start kind of picking back up, like maybe September, October, it kind of started growing back?
August and September were very, very good months and things like that, and then the second half of the year was we were probably up, I don't know, 10-20%. The second half of 2019, and January, like I said, is probably the best one we've had in 10 years, and so we're very excited about how it's working. And Alyssa and I are, we're not afraid to say, I don't know. Somebody comes in and says, "Will this appliance do this?" It's like, I don't know. I can tell you what a clarinet's going to do, but I can't tell you what's going to happen with this appliance. So our learning curve has been huge, but it's
They have great memories, and they do a lot more with the computer probably than we did. They do a lot more online.
Going back to Scott, though, he remembered everything. And when we first got here, he didn't write down a password. He didn't need to because he didn't need to. And Mom and Dad didn't get on. And
He had.
so they were everywhere. And so we had to have our computer guy come in and break into the computers because I didn't know any passwords and stuff like that.
Couldn't get in anything.
We couldn't get into anything. So,
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we're updating those kinds of things right now and going that way. But
They do things every now and then that I say, Scott's up there laughing at you.
yeah. Sometimes he's laughing with us, but sometimes he's laughing at us too.
So do you notice that the leadership principles that you would use in band or as a principal, that you utilize some of those same things here?
As a band director, I sold stuff all the time. Not the cheese and sausage and all that stuff the band kids sell.
Right.
Not that stuff kind of selling. But I had to sell my program. You know, because it's not like being a math teacher where they send you 30 kids every year and next semester they send you 30 more kids. With band, you have to go out and get those kids. You have to make them want to be part of your program. So you had to sell your program. You had to sell it to the kids. You had to sell it to the parents. You had to sell it to your administrators to make sure. And then you also had to sell it to the community so they would buy those cheese and sausage things. So sales has been something I've done the entire time. I've been doing this, and you can't have the name Wayman and not have a little salesmanship in you anyway.
And
you
he's
know?
very organized. The only thing is, he doesn't have Scott's memory.
No.
Scott had the wonderful memory. He doesn't. It's a good thing he's organized and can use that computer.
I do have.
He doesn't have as good a memory.
I try to stay as organized as I can so we can remember things and make sure we're doing the right things. But leadership-wise, you know, again, if you're a good leader, you're good with people. And that's what you have to do in sales too. I don't like to give spiels. I don't want to lie to people. It's like, look, let's just talk. And you need the appliances. Here's my appliances. Let's talk about them. What do you need? How do you use them and things like that? And you just talk and have a relationship with people. And that's I think that's the key to sales, and I think that's the key to why Wayman's has been here for all this time. You know, and it's not just Scott that was here. I mean, with Dad in here, and then go back over the years. John Taylor was here a long time. Everybody knew the name John Taylor because they'd heard him on the radio. But then, I mean, John did a great job here, and you know, every time we turn around, he's retiring from something, but we keep making him come back.
Now, is he back here?
Well,
John back?
He fills in every now and then.
Yeah, he fills in every now. He came in on January 1st and worked with us. But I think he enjoys it because it's almost a hobby now to come in and do it. It's not a regular job that he had. But but you know, I mean, just over the years, you just trust the people that are here and things like that, and you come up with a relationship, and that to me is what is exactly the same as teaching. I mean, even going down to the level of teaching, not just selling your program, but having that relationship with kids. You know, sometimes having that relationship with that kid's parents is more important because kids will want to give up fast. But if you get that relationship with the parents, the kids are going to stay. And then again, band directors have a completely different relationship with kids because we have them for several years rather than you have that math teacher 1 year. We have them for multiple years. So we get to, you know, that's one of the cool things. You get to watch this kid come in as a sixth grader.
Being gone 31 years, people walk in the door and he'll say, I know I should know that. Well, they've changed and he's changed.
Yeah.
It's
well, and over those years, I probably have 5,000 student names and parent names and things like in my head. You know, I can look at somebody and not know their name at all, but I can go, trombone player, right? I mean, that part comes back to me, but not knowing what their name is, I can't get that part.
Mark, who's had the biggest impact on you as a person?
It had to be my family. It had to be my family because, again, I kind of talked about that at the early part was the sacrifices they did for me and for Scott and all those extra hours of work that I didn't know. I knew, but I didn't know. Right. You know, when Scott got his saxophone, really wanted that new saxophone, they figured out, well, I have to work this many hours here and I have to do this so that Scott could get that. And they had to work this many hours here and this many hours there so that I could have tuition to go to IU and things like that. So that's where it is.
He would call and say, how are we doing, Mom? I'd say, we're fine. You just keep going to the classes, keep getting those good grades. It'll be there. I'm working some extra. We're going to get there.
Yeah. And so
we didn't want a lot of loans or bills.
Right. And there's a whole bunch of people that I graduated with that are still paying off student loans even all these years later. I mean, we're still paying off Alyssa's student loans from that, and you know, it's been years that you teach, but you're still paying them off. You know, so I was very lucky, and like I said, they worked for their kids, and so that's had the big influence on me.
So the future's bright for Wayman's. It's on record. You're not closing.
We're not closing.
You're around.
Dad's not dead.
Dad's not dead.
We're still going.
The future is bright for Wayman's.
Yes, we're very excited about it. Like, and Martinsville in general is going to be very exciting. These next 3 or 4 years with the interstate coming through and things like that, and then not just the heartache of the interstate coming through, what's going to blossom after the interstate goes through? What's going to happen to
It's
Martinsville?
going to have its
then?
bad days with,
Right.
with the
The ba-
highway,
yeah.
but the future looks good.
After it's here, then we're going to see what people are going to come up with to continue what's going on with Martinsville. How are we going to pull them downtown? How are we going to pull them into the Fall Foliage Festival? How are we going to continue this? Well, not continue the history of Martinsville, make a new history for Martinsville. What's going to be the history prior to '69 and now the history after '69? It's going to be very exciting. The next 5 to 10 years of Martinsville is going to be very critical, but it's going to be very exciting
Yeah.
too, you know.
Well, Mark, we're glad that you and Alyssa are in Martinsville to go through that with us.
Well, thank you.
Darlene, thank you for joining us. Thank you to you and your husband, Gail, for just being business owners in the community for so long. You've made an impact. You've been employers. You've furnished our homes.
Yes.
You've sold us appliances that have kept our clothes clean and our food cold.
There we go.
And I can tell you're the backbone of the family. And so,
There
thank
I
you.
am, yeah. See?
There we go.
Listen to him.
Okay, Mom.
All right, thank you very much.